Dope. Is that like a German kind of descent last name? Like,
It is.
yeah.
Yeah, good eye.
Dope. You watch any soccer?
I don't. I should though. That's probably the one sport that I've been missing out on the most. I only know the superstars from soccer cards, and that's about
Oh
it.
yeah. Yeah, I watch some Bundesliga, and of course, whenever the World Cup is on, I gotta watch Germany. Like they're like the best team out here. Freaking creating every new year. Every year they create like 10 new players, like 10 new superstars. Like it's crazy what they're doing, in Germany. And
You're in Germany?
no, I'm just saying like in general. Like I like watching soccer, and like I
Oh,
like watching like German soccer, and what they do is just crazy because every year, I don't know how they do it, but they just generate like mad superstars, like young superstars. They have like a good system. Maybe other teams should implement that. As a matter of fact, I mean, I know you're into like basketball and baseball, but a lot of like U.S. players are moving to Germany, and like really young like stars from U.S. are going to Germany, even getting better. And then finally, like, dude, U.S. didn't even make the World Cup like 2 years ago. That's pretty sad.
although the women are better than
Oh, that's
everybody else.
different. That's
That's a
different.
different
Yeah, they actually
story.
won. I think I watched the World Cup final against Japan. We won like 7-0, something like that.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's a different story. But the U.S. men, we're pretty ass. I don't know.
trash. I don't know why. Also, you'd think that the U.S. would have an all right training program and youth system, but they don't.
Not. It's just that in Europe, they have academies. It's kind of like you don't go to college, you go to an academy, and it's 80% soccer, 20% studying. Whereas like in college, it's kind of like 50-50 if you're a student athlete, and then you have to go to the pros, right? So it's just kind of like another medium you have to go through, right?
It's interesting. And I think a lot of the stars here in America would choose like 4 or 5 sports over soccer. Like LeBron would choose football, chose
Oh,
basketball, would probably even choose like hockey over soccer.
I don't know. I think at some point, man, because as like US is so diverse right now, at some point soccer is going to be the number one sport. You see David Beckham, you see all these guys investing in soccer teams. There's not just the MLS. I mean, of course there's more teams in MLS, but there's another league. I forgot what the actual abbreviation is, but there's even more soccer teams. The World Cup is going to be here in what, 6 years, North America. So it's going to be big, bro, at some point.
Soccer is 100% going to be huge
Yeah.
here. And that's
But right now, I think number one is football, right?
American football. Yeah.
American football, yeah. Uh, are you like
Although
any?
basketball, I mean, football is up there for the big games, but the frequency of basketball, in my opinion, gives it the edge, right? You have 16 football games. A football game would have to
Uh,
get more than 5 times the viewership of big basketball games because there are 82 games in a season plus a 20 plus postseason, 20 plus game postseason as well. So, I mean, by the numbers, you would go basketball and baseball. Baseball is 162 games in a season, which is insane. But per individual game, football's got everybody beat for sure.
wait, isn't there a decline in viewership for football?
Yeah, I mean, there's a decline in static TV viewership for everybody because people are watching more clips and they're watching stuff online. Sports viewership in general, like how many people know the scores of every game and saw the highlights from every game are at an all-time high, but like
Mm-hmm.
people sitting down in front of their TV and typing in their optimum passwords online, that's not at an all-time high.
Yeah, and they say it for like hockey, or I think is it baseball, where like the viewership is going down, and it's because of course, there's so many baseball players, and I think I heard something along the lines that they're not really allowed to have like a personal brand or promote themselves, something along those lines, because I think the MLB, they kind of control everything, right? Whereas for soccer, you can kind of promote yourself, and when you promote yourself, soccer players, or I mean, people kind of follow that, and it just amplifies the sport. But I think in the MLB, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's kind of like a closed system where they kind of direct and control everything.
Yeah, it's totally true. I think they're beginning to see their previous and past wrongs in that regard, but it's in the MLBPA agreement as to where you can't even post a photo of yourself without getting the direct written consent from Major League Baseball.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they They definitely got to change it up. So I mean, before even like I guess talking to that respect of like sports specifically, kind of give us your origin story. Um, as like an entrepreneur, kind of content creator, like how did you get into the position that you're in right now? Like, of course,
Yeah,
you're the founder and owner of Hoops Nation. You're co-founder of Void Media. Have multiple projects going on. So kind of give us your origin story.
totally. Yeah, so I started doing Facebook pages, building them up back in 2013. Facebook was still young, but it had a few years under its belt in terms of people actually putting media on there and
Mm-hmm.
understanding the algorithm. So I did have a bit to learn even back then. Started doing that, started broadcasting high school sports. So I started broadcasting JV girls field hockey. It's talking about a very impressive sports. That was the first one I ever did. I knew none of the players on either teams, and frankly, I didn't even know the sport. I had never seen it before, but I started broadcasting that on local high school radio, and from then on, I really thought the rest was just gravy because at that point, I thought I had made it. But I kept doing that regardless, and started doing boys and girls basketball, football. Eventually, I won best in the country for play-by-play. And then around the same time was building up other basketball media outlets, eventually Hoops Nation on Facebook. And then graduated high school, pivoted in the meantime from the Facebook to Instagram, and then eventually TikTok and all the other platforms, and built out my team and everything. But to keep the origin story brief, took the broadcasting career, started broadcasting some games for the NBA, and doing a bunch of different stuff on that front. And then in the last 12, 24 months, I've been just focused on building my personal brand, my personal team, and then the teams for some of the other companies I have. Cards Nation, which is my sports card subsidiary company underneath Hoops Nation. Travel Nation is the next one for travel and nature stuff. And obviously Hoops Nation, and then my podcast, which I do 4 to 5 times a week.
Dope. So you're working on a lot of things here. So are you like a firm believer? I see like a lot of businesses, e-commerce, where they kind of create a product or service first, and then they generate a lot of content, more specifically towards the brand side of things. But I think in your model, you're just focusing on just purely content, the branding side of it. And that's more of a long-term play where you have to be very, very patient because, of course, it's a business and you want to monetize that. But of course, you have to build the infrastructure first, all the content and whatnot. So when you first started this on Facebook, at least, was that kind of your thought process, or it just happened? You just worked on it every day?
It's funny. I've always had the perspective of I'm not here to sell anybody anything. Like, I'm not here to
Mm-hmm.
sell you anything. I'm not here to sell your audience anything. If you ask me at the end what I'm here to promote, the answer is nothing. I want people to walk away with value from any time I'm anywhere. If I'm meeting somebody in person, if I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
something online, if I'm doing a podcast, I don't want anything from you, literally. And that's why I love doing it so much. I have other ways to make money. I do sports cards and I invest, and I run ads. I have other ways to make money, and I choose not. I choose my personal brand not being that. My personal
Mm-hmm.
brand is the sole fulfiller and enabler of other activities. If I'm able to make a million lives better every year, right? Um, then by nature of that, opportunities are going to come about, whether it be charitable for me to get involved on those fronts, or real business or investing opportunities are going to come about from that personal brand approach. But like you said, very long term. You can't expect or want anything in return for taking that
Mm-hmm.
approach. It's the 20 to 40-year approach, which is not sexy at all, but it is what it is. The truth.
And I think it's much easier if you're passionate about something because when you work on something, it doesn't really feel like work. You're just doing it. I'm pretty sure you can work 16, 18-hour days and not feel tired at all because at the end of the day, you're doing what you actually like, right?
Bro, this is work. Like, this podcast right here is work. How great is that?
Mm-hmm.
Same for
For
you.
sure.
You enjoy it. It's all that matters.
For sure. Yeah. So when you first started on Facebook, that's when the organic reach was still pretty at all-time high, right?
We're talking about sexy. That organic reach. That was good looking. Yeah.
So did you kind of have a talent for picking out what mediums to use and of course to leverage to grow your fan base? You know, because of course you started on Facebook, you moved to Instagram, you got 1 million followers there. And of course you have your TikTok where all the attention, all the organic reach is at. So you kind of have to know where the attention is, how to create, native content for it. And don't be afraid to start back from to zero again, because if you kind of stay on one platform and that platform dies down, so will your brand if you don't go anywhere else, right?
Yeah, you got to diversify. And even off social media too, right? So like email newsletters, you got to SMS, direct to text. You have to do do as much as you can and diversify as much as possible to limit your risk.
Mm-hmm. So for how long have you been working on Hoop Nations to provide some context here?
So I started it in 2014 or 15, if I'm not mistaken, and so 4 or 5 years since. But yeah, it's funny. I'm not as involved on that business anymore. I'm just really
Mm-hmm.
from a creative standpoint. I don't do any of the posting or strategy there anymore. But I love it. I still own 100% of it. But the people who are crushing it now are far better than I ever was.
So now you implemented systems in play, right?
Yeah,
Now,
it's cool
before
when
we,
when your baby can walk.
no, for sure. So you can focus on other projects. Now, before we talk about like those systems, I think that's pretty interesting too. Um, now, are you trying, or did you kind of have the ambition of this being like the bar stool of basketball or the BuzzFeed of basketball? You know, being a major media company because you worked with pretty impressive people. You know, VaynerMedia, Dunk, Atlantic. I think Meek Mill at some point, right? So you've been around some pretty big players. Um, so how is that? Like, how did you kind of grow to that point? And is your overall ambition being, like I said, the bar stool of basketball, BuzzFeed?
My not necessarily. It's a great question though. I think my personal goals are very different. Like my personal goals, I just want to help as many people as possible. I want to do
Mm-hmm.
like the craziest charitable things ever. I want to like get everybody involved. Like just utilize my passions, like utilize my passion for the ocean, for aquatics. When I was younger, I thought I was going to be a marine biologist. Utilize my passion for sports cards for charity. Like that's my goal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the personal brand will help facilitate all of that. But in terms of Hoops Nation, like, yeah, I want it to be I definitely do want it to be the biggest outlet, but it gets to a point, like it kind of is the biggest in its own
Mm-hmm.
right, like for what it
Yeah.
is exactly how I envisioned it up. Like it has 7 million followers across social, like all on basketball, all levels of basketball, with like the style that I put in place. Like it's, obviously I want it to get bigger, but there comes and it will get a lot bigger, but the numbers don't change what it is. That's, I guess, what I'm getting to, in the sense of like the content. I think we're probably at a 6 right now out of 10. I want to get it up to like an 8 or a 9 by the end
In
of
terms of
next.
quality or quantity?
Quality. Quantity, we're at a fucking 15. Um, the quality, we're probably at like a 6. Um, but so I want to scale that up before I start thinking about the size of the following or anything like that. And that's something that over the years I've grown to care less and less about, and more
Mm-hmm.
um, like I was talking about earlier, how we're affecting people and how many people we're helping. If we're helping every single
Mm-hmm.
person that follows us, then yeah, I want 1 billion followers. But it does, like, I don't want that unless it's deserved for helping people.
For sure, for sure. Either that's through charity or you want to do your own thing, monetize it. Now, I feel that now the real currency is, you know, attention, right? Because if you have your own platform with fans and followers, you can kind of leverage that so you can kind of put out a message for an event, a charity product service. Do you think that's true where in today's day and age, you shouldn't be looking at, your product or service, but kind of like your overall brand, posting as much content as possible and, just trying to grow an audience there. Attention is key. That's the currency nowadays.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's definitely never been more important to. It's not necessarily about a following in terms of quantity, but more so again in terms of quality of following. Like you could have 500,000 followers, but you're trying to raise money for your startup and it's not going to work. Whereas somebody with 400 followers who has the 7 right VCs who are going to drop an investment just because you said so and they trust you. So it really matters quality over quantity in that regard. But for product or like DTC products and things of that nature, yeah, you got to be in tune, but you can also outsource that.
Mm-hmm. So at what point were you like, okay, this is actually becoming a thing? Because, you started back in 2014 on Facebook. I don't know how many other media companies were doing the exact same thing as you. I don't know if you're doing a very niche thing at the time. I mean, there's certainly a lot of like sports pages and Instagram theme pages around basketball and any other sport on Instagram. But were you one of the first ones to ever really do this in the beginning, at least?
I don't know. I remember a lot of people were doing it back then. So I definitely wasn't even close to the first. But in terms of like a moment where I thought it was real, I still don't look at it, like that. I just look at it as, I'm grateful for it all and
Mm-hmm.
uh, just try to have as much fun as I can, while we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, in your case, like I said, you worked with a lot of big players here. For any brand, any entrepreneur, any person trying to, you know, grow awareness for their charity, for example, how much time and effort has to go into putting in the work in terms of consistency, putting in a lot of content? Because you said you're a 15 out of 10 in terms of putting content. And if you're a media company, that's really like your number one job, just pushing content, as much content as possible. And of course, the quality can come thereafter, but you really have to push content. So how important is it, or how hard is it to push that much content for that many years consistently?
It takes a lot of time. But if you love what you do, like we were saying earlier, it's all irrelevant at the end of the day. You just got to
Mm-hmm.
do what you love.
But did you kind of have some insights? I'm pretty sure I've been doing this for so many years. And of course, you have your teams in play, your systems in play. You kind of know what to post, how to post, maybe what time to post, what content to post on the specific platform. You get a lot of insights, a lot of data.
Tell that to the New York Knicks. They haven't won since 1973.
Yeah. They can't use that data to win a game now.
No, they can't.
Might not just be a Brooklyn Nets fan.
Not,
That'll be a huge slap in the face.
not so fast.
No, I feel you, man. I feel you. Um, but yeah, I'm pretty sure at this point now people come to you, right? And did you have to kind of deny or decline some of the requests because you want to stick true to yourself? You want to do your own thing. Maybe you had plans of doing a collab with you. Maybe you weren't feeling it. Is that true? Or like a lot of people who do want to hit you up, work with you, but you kind of say no because you're just in your mode of, moving your business in a certain way.
Yeah, I think in terms of particularly just me as a person, if something comes across my email or anybody who helps me out and their desks, um, it's mutually beneficial, I'm in, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love doing the things that I love, which are pretty much talking about things I care about, building businesses, working out, eating, hanging out with friends, swimming, like snorkeling and being in the ocean, like doing charity and doing podcasts. That's like pretty much all I do. So if it falls into one of those boats, then it's good. If it doesn't, maybe it doesn't make so much sense.
Mm-hmm. How do you know when to kind of step aside? Because, Hoop Nation is your baby, right? But you said you kind of stepped aside. You still own 100% of it. How do you know is the right time to, like, you know what? I still want to own it, but I don't want to really work in it anymore. I want to do other things. Like, how hard is that decision? How do you know when to do that?
For me, it couldn't come sooner. Yeah. Yeah, I got tired of it, man. I was doing the same thing, 20 posts a day for 3 years, probably more than that, because I was doing different pages before. Gets old. Like anything. Like, and it got to a point where it wasn't as exciting. Like the goal, like my personal goals for it were achieved.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's a bigger thing because there's a team and there are other people who have other goals on my team, and I want to help them achieve all of their goals and keep building it as big as it can be. But my personal goals from the beginning were achieved. A standalone basketball media company that kind of stemmed from my voice.
Mm-hmm. And you said you want to grow your personal brand, and now was your personal brand kind of did it have to be shown because of course people are going to question who's the owner of Hoops Nation, this huge media company, and maybe you can't hide behind the curtains forever. Everyone's going to ask who the owner is, so you kind of have to step
Well,
out and be like, look,
you're,
man, this is me and this is how I do it.
you're very kind, but I don't think too many people cared.
You think so? I don't know, people like to learn.
Yeah, people like to learn, but I don't think it's like TMZ headline. Who is the owner of Hoops Nation? I don't think it's I don't take myself too seriously in that regard. But I think I gave people, a little bit of a reason to care. So I think it
Mm-hmm.
definitely had that going for it.
Okay. And why do you want to grow your personal brand? Because I feel like nowadays people, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of people like to throw it out and they don't have an exact reason. They don't have a why, right? Because people like Gary Vee, they push it, and then people are like, oh, if he says it, then I have to do it too. And I feel that a lot of people they can kind of try to get out of their comfort zone or not act the way they want to because of one person saying that they have to, right? Now, in your opinion, how important is it to build a personal brand to push out a message, either that's product, service, charity, project, whatever it is? How important do you think it is for a personal brand? And is it really a requirement nowadays for any entrepreneur or anyone of that fact?
But it's like the term influencer, right? You don't have to be public or even have a following to be an influencer. You can be
Mm-hmm.
influencing things behind the scene. Your personal brand is whatever you want it to be. If you're trying to be Gary, then yeah, you got to post every day. You got to do this and that. You got to yell and you got to do your thing. Like you got to be that. But it's the classic, you can have 10 followers, but if they're Michael Jordan, Derek Jeter, LeBron James, Barack Obama, it's much more valuable than the guy who has a million of bots.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, of course, actions speak louder than words. So I mean, of course, you don't have to be shouting every moment, but if you do certain actions, that's going to speak louder than words, of course. Now, did you kind of you found or co-found Voice or Void Media? Was it right after you kind of stepped away or stepped aside from Hoops
Yeah, so
Nation?
the guys at Void, which they do a bunch of different stuff with helping athletes and whatnot. We came together and decided to create a media company out of it, which is what Void Media is, and it's been going really well. It's kind of like what Hoops Nation is for basketball, but this for sports business.
Mm,
Which, it kind of goes in lieu with my progression, because 2 years ago, I was 18, just graduating high school. I didn't really care about, business, or I was just a basketball fan. But now I care a lot more about business than I do about basketball. And just like learning about business, talking to other people about business and how to build more, um, and have fun while doing it. And that falls pretty closely in line with that, being that we're building a sports business media outlet, which isn't too cool sounding, but it's gonna be super cool. And if you've taken a look at the page, it is super sweet.
wait, so the sports media outlet. What do you mean by that exactly? Is it kind of like
Sports business
agents or
media outlet.
sports?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the page, you'll get a good idea. It's Void Media Co. on Instagram, but we will post about like an NFL player just decided to get half of his salary paid in Bitcoin. That was a post.
Uh,
LeBron exited his company Ladder. That was a post. Those sorts of things.
have you
Crazy.
watched have you watched the documentary The 30 for 30 Broke?
I haven't. Is it good?
Dude, you have to watch it. It's mad funny because, of course, I mean, it even happens to this day where, athletes, they're making bank, right? But depending on what sport they're playing, if it's football, if they're not a QB, the most that they're going to be playing is, I think, on average, like 5 years, right? 5,
Mhm.
6 years if they're lucky, if there's no injuries, right? So they make a lot of money in that small time frame, like millions of dollars in that time frame, and they spend all that money. And then once they retire, they're completely broke because, number one, they're not financial literate. They spend all their money, or the people that they hire, their accountants and people in finance, kind of screw them over. So a lot of athletes are just completely broke, and all these OGs kind of talk about it and tell the younger guys, like, look, you need to get your money right. I don't know if you saw that video a long time ago, not a long time ago, with Marshawn Lynch. It's like, you got to get your chicken right, you know? You got to get your and it's definitely a good documentary. I think it's up there with like Bo Jackson, the one on 30 for 30s. I think
Yeah.
that's 1 and 2. Those are really good documentaries that you should probably watch if you haven't already.
I'll check out Broke for sure.
Yeah, I think you can easily stream it online. So that's the type of content you post. So are you kind of let's see, like the CMO of it, like the chief marketing officer, because you kind of know a lot about social media and how to grow an audience, right?
Yeah, I don't think we have formal titles like that, but I'm a partner
Yeah.
and co-founder.
Mm-hmm. So what insights do you have? Like, I don't know if you like wrote this down, but off the top of your head, what do you need to do to grow an audience? Because I feel there's so many platforms. There's LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and you can do all that at once. But I feel it can be very challenging because if you do all that at once, you won't go anywhere. And at least in my opinion, I think you have to do the 80-20 principle where 80% of your work should be on platforms where the organic reach is just crazy, like TikTok right now. The other 20% can be on like Instagram, YouTube, etc. So what do you think?
I think generally that's true, especially if you're beginning. But once you're going, once you have your flow, there's no reason not to just repurpose stuff for other platforms. That's the posting is the easy part. The making is the
Mm.
hard part.
Like repurposing the content?
Yeah. You just take your TikTok video, post it on the IG Reels. You take it, put a
Mm.
little copy on it, post it on LinkedIn. You size it properly, put it on YouTube. Yeah.
Now, how how much content has to be original content? Of course, you can be 100% your content, but I feel like a lot of content creators or media companies repost other people's uh, content and kind of write different copy. Is that a good strategy, you think?
For just like content curation as opposed to
Yeah, because like you said, posting 20 times a day for like 3 years can be tiresome. But if maybe 5 posts were from different platforms and you kind of, of course, give them some credit, at whoever made it, write your own copy, that can be one post that wasn't yours necessarily. You're just
yeah.
sharing it.
No, I think there's a place for a lot of that. I mean, that's a lot of what Hoops Nation is, apart from like the
Mm-hmm.
original graphics and videos.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great play. But then again, then you're working in the time of having to find that right stuff, and you don't want to use the same stuff from the same people all the time. So there are problems with everything and solutions with everything. You just got to pick what's best for you, what you enjoy the most, and figure out how A takes you to end goal B.
Mm-hmm. Do a lot of people hit you up for, maybe for a consulting for help in terms of how to grow their Instagram pages, social media pages, based off your experience?
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's all just about like who the people I work with, the people I do anything with. It's all just about how am I, super valuable to you, and then how do I end up better, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially after, as opposed to before. And if
Mm-hmm.
all those boxes are checked, then we work together. If they don't, then we don't.
For sure. And did you just totally rely on organic reach? Did you do any like paid ads? Did you collaborate with any other pages to give each other shout outs, for example, to really help you get that catalyst to grow even faster?
Definitely collaborated, never did paid ads.
So how do you, I mean, collaborate? Of course, people know, and I'm not going to say people know Facebook ads, but I mean, that's one form of really putting your name out there, really amplifying your message. But how did you, in your case, kind of collaborate with other brands?
Um, it was really just they would post some of our content, we would post some of theirs. Sometimes it would be formal, sometimes we would just do it without even speaking to each other about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still kind of how I do stuff today. It's not like a formal contractual collaboration. It's just like, yeah, we like similar things. We both like sports cards. Like, let's talk about sports cards. And then their fans or their people will check it out, and my people will check it out too.
Is that something that you're really diving into or kind of working on full time? The sports cards and investments of the sports cards and just creating content on that?
I'm obsessed with it. So some days it can definitely take up a lot of my time. Yeah.
When did you kind of take interest in sports cards?
I was super into it back in 2013, 14. Took a 3, 4 year hiatus, I guess, till last summer, and then dove right back into it. And this year it's just exploded. So it's been a blast. I think the pandemic has a lot to do with it, honestly.
Yeah. And are you kind of the guy that thinks like a long-term investment, or are you just a straight up collector?
Both. I'm long-term investing and collecting. I will not buy a card if I don't think it's going to appreciate in value. But there are also cards that I buy that I never plan on selling.
So if anyone wants to like invest in cards, what are some things, like some nuances that you should know about? Because of course people can compare this to the stock market, but it's very similar in that respect. But I'm pretty sure there's some nuances that any card investor should know about, at least in the sports realm. On So what do you think are some nuances or some important things that investors should know before they partake in this? Because it can be the cool thing to do now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely say do your research beforehand. Like anything, don't invest in a company's stock without really understanding their financials and their business. Don't put money into a basketball player without really knowing his game, without watching him play, without studying the market. You got to really, really do your due diligence. I say 4 to 6 weeks minimum research before you buy a single card. So watch, I have 50 to 100 hours of sports card content on the internet, just talking about cards in all detail, talking with experts. So if anybody wants to get into cards, I mean, that's not a terrible place to start, but you got to do your due diligence wherever you're looking.
Mm-hmm. And when you say long-term play, is it literally like years down the line you're going to sell it, or is it maybe towards the end of the season sort of play?
Years.
So in that, I mean, I don't know too much about sports cards and the strategies behind it, but do you kind of invest in players who are pretty much iconic? The LeBron James, Kobe's, maybe even like the Michael Jordans, and that down the line their value is just going to appreciate, or what?
Yeah, if you buy the right cards of all those guys. Yeah. So I'm into that. And I'm also into some of the younger players now, like guys like Trey Young and Zion Williamson. Those are two of the biggest. Yeah.
And you also do on openings, like you buy a packs and kind of unbox them. Do any lives?
That's probably the worst investment you can do, but hey, it's fun as hell and it's great content. So it's all part of the game.
Dope, dope. And when did you? So you also add that to your podcast, right? You can have multiple media streams coming in.
What was the question?
Like you also kind of integrate that with your podcast, right?
The
Sports.
card?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a separate show. It's called Talking Shop.
Mm-hmm.
That's where all the sports card content I was referring to comes from. But so I have the Buster Show, which occasionally I'll talk cards on, but then Talking Shop is it's totally own separate thing, and that's heavy.
And that can be found what on anywhere, Spotify, Apple
Yeah,
Podcasts.
best place to watch it because it really is a show where like people show off cards to the camera and stuff. Best place to
Yeah.
watch is on YouTube.
Okay. Okay. And of course, with COVID, and you mentioned that you want to do charity events, but with COVID, it might be a lot more difficult to do that now. are there any plans or projects that you're kind of working on right now so that when things get better, things can be put into play?
Yeah, yeah, tons of stuff. Unfortunately, I can't talk about them yet, but
No,
I'm
not yet.
excited because they are all charitable, and I hope everybody supports when they're out. I can say who they
Potential.
benefit. One is benefiting an Australian company that is helping. They're helping revitalize the coral reefs in Australia along the Great Barrier Reef that have been dying from pollution and the sea rising and all sorts of different things. And the other one helps get underprivileged kids in New York involved in youth sports. So that's all I can say. But bringing the two together, and I'm excited about it.
Dope. But potentially what? Maybe this summer if there's a way, or we just don't know yet. No clue at
I'm,
all.
I'm thinking I'm less an in-person charity guy and more of like how do I get large numbers of people
Mm-hmm.
rally around things online and around products. So that's more where my head's at, and that kind of stuff can happen now. I mean,
Yeah.
everything is virtual, podcast virtual.
Mm-hmm. And wait, how hard is that to really, create an event, a charity? Because you need to have two different parties, people who are either want to sponsor it. You got to get the venue. You got to get all these condiments and whatnot. Of course, if it's a physical event, right? Um, how is that challenge? Like, how do you kind of transition from what you were doing with Hoops Nation, Void Media, and now to go into an actual event, charity based event?
Well, I'm not doing any in person. I'm just doing online, but
Mm,
I imagine it is very hard. And that is another reason why I'm not doing it because I would rather just focus on the people who are benefiting as opposed to like, oh, let me put on a fancy dinner to get people to spend money. If they want to donate, they can donate. If they don't, it's their loss. It's tax
yeah.
deductible.
Of course, I think with Barstool Barstool Sports, they
Their
kind of had
fund.
a fund.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super
So it's
dope. I'm a big fan. Everybody should donate to that.
yeah. So I think even with Gary Vee not too long ago, he was on TikTok for like 24 hours raising hella money for I forgot what it wasn't Pencils for Promise, but it was for something else.
I
But yeah,
like
everything can be done virtually, and it can have that same impact. And that just goes to show if you have a lot of attention, because of course Barstool Sports, there's so many eyeballs on that. There's so many eyeballs on Gary Vee. And of course, you said you have millions of followers across different platforms. You have a lot of eyeballs on you. So you can really short out a message and really influence people to do X, Y, or Z.
100%, brother. That's the game, and that's another benefit of having a personal brand too. Like Gary, because of his personal brand, was able to do that and raise all that money for charity with
Mm-hmm.
zero overhead. 100% of the money goes to charity. It didn't cost anything, and that's because of his personal brand. So
Mm-hmm.
kudos to him and everybody who does that.
Of course, man. Like he himself is an asset. VaynerMedia, kind of like Hoops Nation, is an asset with all these fans and followers and all the engagement you're getting. And of course, if you leverage your own personal brand, you can really amplify that message. So it's really important here. So do you think for brands, businesses, either they're in corporate or just e-commerce brands, how much effort, maybe if you're a solo entrepreneur, how much effort do you think one should commit or allocate to putting as much content as possible and not just about, thinking about the sale?
Repeat the question, please.
Like, how important is it for businesses to really think about content creation rather than, asking or trying to get a sale, trying to make money?
Um, I can't speak as much to the product business because I've never had a product except for like
Mm-hmm.
merchandise and stuff like that yet. Um, but the answer is always, you shouldn't ever have to sell yourself. You should just have to put it in front of people. And then if the product is good enough, they will want it. That's always the, um, you know, voice of reason that I know of. And to that point too, you got to make sure people are seeing it over and over again, right? There's the classic tale that you got to see something like 5, 6, 7 times before you're actually going to make that purchase. So making sure you're getting in front of those people one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 times, and then maybe they'll think about buying it. But you can't just go expecting everybody to support your thing without giving them a good reason or a good story.
Oh, for sure. Out of curiosity, has anyone ever offered you to buy Hoops Nation out?
Of course,
Really?
yeah.
Sheesh. And of course, you're thinking long term. Of course, you can even grow this because there's a story with what was it? It was Minecraft. You know, it was sold to Microsoft for I don't know how many hundred millions of dollars, but once the guy sold it, he was just extremely sad and depressed, and I don't think he was ever the same. I think in one interview, he was like, you know, I really wished, even though I have all this money, he wasn't as happy, or he isn't as happy as he was when he owned it, right? Now that can be the same thing for any business owner, or for you with digital with Hoops Nation. How do you even think about that or conjure? Look, I want to stick to my guns. I want to see how this all plans out, or maybe I want to sell it in X amount of years. Like, how do you kind of decide that? When do you know when's the right time? I feel like a lot of business owners nowadays, they can be kind of hesitant.
You know, it's funny. Money is great. Success is better. Happiness is even better than that. We're all in search of happiness. Now, does success make us a little bit happier? Usually. Does money equal a little bit of success and also make your problems, some of your alleviate some problems? Yeah. But neither of the two by themselves equal the latter. You know, some of the happiest people in the world have very little money and are not perceived as successful, although I would beg to differ. So it's just a matter of what your goals are. If your goal, like if happiness for you is owning a yacht, and the only way to own that yacht is by selling your company, then yeah, you're going to be pretty happy. But for a guy like Notch, who founded Minecraft, he's probably happier. His happy place is probably operating within the company as opposed to living in a mega mansion. And he probably could have had both, but regardless, you can't look back on previous decisions because you'll hurt your neck. But I think somebody as talented as him will go on to do more incredible things, and money will only be a catalyst to be able to get some of it done quicker.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really dope because, with social media, I think it just shoots content about us looking at the metric of making X amount of money for us to be happy. But in reality, things, it's really a mindset thing. You can be happy with little to nothing. In third world countries, people who have not much are the happiest people in the world. Whereas here in the US, the richest people are very depressed. And as a matter of fact, here in the US, we have like higher suicide rates than that of third world countries. And you would think that would be the reverse of that. It's all
I
about
think
perspective.
we got a lot of problems here, so
Yeah, it's
that's
been
a
a
whole
crazy.
other topic. Yeah,
Not yes.
I think our schools, there are a lot of things that should be fixed there. That's for starters. But
Oh yeah. Wait, you went to college?
no, I
No.
didn't even apply. Yeah.
Wait, so what did you do? You kind of just worked, of course, with digital hoops. Did you kind of work other side hustles, or what?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the second I graduated high school, I graduated in Connecticut. I moved to the city. That was 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Um, and yeah, never looked back. But in terms of some of the things that I would add to the education system that I think would both bring down the suicide rates and make people more successful are two things. One, there should be a mental health class in every high school, teaching kids how to, strategies to calm down when they're upset, and talk to friends and how to meet people and things of that nature, and also financial literacy. To your point, I think that you see it in athletes, but it happens with everybody else too. So I think those two things plus it's crazy that there's no class in school that teaches you diet and exercise. Not gym is like bullshit. Like, you run around and nobody looks, like you have fun with your guy friends, and half the people are just sitting down in the corner. But like a real diet and nutrition class, as boring as it seems, like making it fun and exciting, that's the move, bro. It would change a lot. And when I eventually run for president in 2036, that's going to be one of the forefront. It's going to be at the forefront of my campaign, unless hopefully somebody fixes it or does it first.
Yeah, that'd be dope, man. Of course, health class and gym class were definitely a joke. You just cut across the field, don't do the 4 laps or the 1 lap. You know, it's and we're really, really unfit, of course, but that's another topic with McDonald's. Of course, it's kind of weird. Not weird, but you can get a quick unhealthy bite for like a couple bucks, a buck at like at least, right? And then a salad, which is a lot more healthier, can be a lot more expensive. And of course, the incentive is to get the fast food rather than the healthy food. But of course, you got to be fit and whatnot.
Right.
Now, how does your day kind of look like with your new projects, and how much time do you allocate to Hoops Nation if you do at all?
My day is all over the place, sporadic. I decide what I'm gonna do. I look at my calendar. Like usually there will be some things scheduled in advance, but generally speaking, I decide what I want to do that morning.
Okay, there's no real structure. It's kind of like sporadic. You just kind of do things on the spot.
Yeah, if I don't feel like doing
That's how you
something,
operate.
I won't do it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
sounds easy enough, right?
Not for sure. Like a lot of people might say, "Oh, you need to have a structure. You need to sleep at this time, read X amount of books." Like people are trying to put systems in you or ideas, but I think everyone has your own optimal way of being productive. Not everyone,
Exactly.
yeah, not everyone has to follow one's regimen. Everyone has their own optimized way of doing things.
Some people are better off working 1 hour a day, uh, and some people are better off working 16 hours a day. Some people will get more done in 1 hour doing it that way than other people will in working 18 hours. So
Mm-hmm.
it goes both ways. It's just really
Oh,
fascinating.
for sure.
You got to do what's best for you.
Now, going back real quickly to building the systems in play, you said after working for Hoops Nation for so many years, posting so much content, I got boring, and you want to put people in place who are better than you, and that's I think that's really hard to do because a lot of people can be very egotistic. They don't be like, oh, this is my baby. No one's better than me. I created this from scratch. But of course, there's going to be people better than you in some regions, right? In some spaces, marketing or content creation, right? It doesn't matter what it is. How did you find the right people to work with and build systems? Like what tools did you use? How did you find people? And how did you know they were the right guys to put on the team?
I was very lucky from the beginning because I wasn't very good at any of those things. So it wasn't hard to be better than I was. No, but I found everybody through friends. That's usually how I get people through the trust of others that I know. And yeah, just took a 2 to 3 month onboarding for pretty much each person and we got underway, got killing it, and they're all wicked talented, and I'm just lucky to have them.
So is it all an in-house team? So you know all the guys, or is it some of it kind of outsourced to really expand?
Everybody's in house. Yeah.
That's dope. Yeah, I think you can create a really cool culture. Something that really reminds me is Lyrical Lemonade. Of course, Cole Bennett is in the musical industry, right? And whatnot. And you're like in the sports kind of brand. I see very like similarities here, in terms of like, when I look at Cole Bennett and Lyrical Lemonade, it's really like a media company around SoundCloud music artists, right? Who are now mainstream nowadays. And of course, you're doing your thing with Hoops Nation, building an in-house team like he is, posting on social media, and a lot of executives, a lot of entrepreneurs, they would probably want to outsource things. But I think if you create a culture around a brand, you could arguably be a lot more productive. At the end of the day, it's just preference.
100%.
So now, Buster, I don't want to take too much of your time here. So if people want to learn, of course, you can't mention any um, dates yet of your charity events. But if people want to find out more about Hoops Nation, Void Media, the host of the Buster Show, and your other projects, and of course you, where can they find that and hit you up?
Well, I think you just mentioned half of them. Yeah, find me at Buster on Instagram, or check out the Buster Show on all platforms. Talking shop if you're into sports cards. Yeah, and all the charitable stuff that'll be posted on my personal Instagram. Follow at Hoops Nation if you like that stuff. At Travel Nation if you like travel stuff. Um, if you're into business, follow me on LinkedIn. But yeah, I don't have too much to push, but I appreciate you having me. It's been a pleasure.
For sure. And one more thing, are you looking at other projects? Like, are you that type of person that wants to work on more things, or right now are you just focused on kind of grow vertically in each of your brands, each of your projects?
I'm always looking at more.
Yeah.
Yeah, always can't ever be closed off to anything.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I think 2020 has taught me for sure is just that uh, the being closed minded is just the worst. No matter what it is, too, whether it be a personal thing, a professional thing, you never want to be closed off to anything. You always, at the very least, be open minded, and that's how I am about everything.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just to close it off, you can be like, oh, this is not going to work, but you don't know for a fact if you don't try it
I think
yourself, any, right? So
that's
I
it.
think for 2021, if you're ambitious or if you want to try something new, I'd say at least try everything. A lot of entrepreneurs be like, oh, focus on one or two things at most. But if you're just really starting out or really hungry and ambitious, try a million things at once, find what you love, and kind of just expand on that at the end of the day.
100%. one Hundred
So,
percent.
so Buster, bro, it was definitely a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
For sure, man.